Okay, I'm back again. All right. So sorry I've been MIA for the last couple of days. I actually have been working on a couple of new projects, new classes. So look for those, I guess. Anyway, back to my favorite, the Capybara. And let me look at that. Isn't that interesting? All right. So here we have Eraserhead's baby, the Capybara. I am going to. I got the neck installed, the neck tube installed. But what I want to do is I want to. I want to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get a different thing to hold this on. What I want to do is I want to. Fill in the neck area with a kind of some fabric, some of the mesh jersey mesh that I use to kind of smooth that out. So when I'm patterning the body, it'll lie better. It'll also give it a little bit more support because I wasn't able to sew everything in the neck tube. Most of it's just glued because of the foam I'm using, but I think that's the way to do it. So sometimes when I have a weird setup like this one, hey Bob, I feel like I'm on the Bob Newhart show. How's it going? Okay, so this is one of those cell phone holders, but because this thing has the mount on the neck, on the butt at an angle, as opposed to straight down, the straight stand's not working for me. So I think this will work better. Let's see if I can get it in there. This may not work. What if this head comes off? I guess not. Thought I would try. Okay. Let's see now. This whole class is just going to be me figuring out if this would work on the stand. Okay. I'll probably get it on here and then never be able to get it off. It is not going to work. All right, let's try something else. I guess I'll go back to my original stand and figure out what I did with it. There it is. It did look like an alien. It actually, you know what it looks like to me is Eraserhead's baby. If you look that up, looks a lot like that to me. All right, I'll just use this stand. It'll be fine. I'll block my head. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin on some fabric. I'm going to make sure the slant or the stretch is going widthwise. I think I'm going to have to use 2 pieces, so I'll cut this in half. I can always switch to another setup if I have to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this on at the head and then at the body, and try and figure out how to pin it in such a way so that it covers this area. I'll switch cameras so maybe you can kind of see. Maybe you can kind of see. So, yes, I do have the fur. I'm going to use the old fur that I had from Sammy to do it. I really can't afford to put anything into this money-wise, so just going to make do with what I have. It's not 100% maybe what it should be, but it's close enough. Where's the center? Where's the center? Okay. It has not moved along. You know what? I'll just show you guys what I worked on. All right, so I'm working on a class outside of this type of puppet building, which is more in tune with kind of the found object puppet building that I do. Like when I did the aliens for Alien vs. Musical, it was a lot of found objects that I strung together to make puppets. So let me go grab what I built. Okay. So bear with me. This will look kind of familiar to a lot of you. So let me see if I can I zoom that back enough so you can kind of see. But as you can see, it's all made out of found objects. There's a milk carton here for the body. There's parts of a ramen bowl for the hips. There's some water bottles for the upper thigh of the leg. The head is made from a water bottle, and then there's a pill tube that's stuck on the front of it. And there's some bottle caps. And actually the handle that's usually down here ended up as part of the tail. So anyway, I want to start maybe teaching kids right now how to build puppets out of trash or out of recyclables, and we'll see what it does. It actually, I wish I could see if I can get the table up high enough without messing everything up. It actually works. It works pretty well. Again, it's too tough to see really what it does. Maybe I can do it back here. So basically, you can kind of puppeteer it very simply. But I've been doing some experiments with that, and so that's what I've been doing the last couple of days. All right. My plan is, so I get asked all the time if I teach kids how to build puppets, and I always run into this problem where I don't want to use the glues that we use, and the foam is so expensive, and so I stumbled upon this website. I don't know if the company's still in business, but it's called Trash Puppets. And I thought, oh, there's an idea that I can kind of fool around with. So I thought, why not? They're an Australian company, so I apologize if I'm infringing on somebody's intellectual property, but it seemed like a good way to teach kids how to do this type of stuff. So TC5ish says he's been slowly working on inventing an anteater. That's cool. Is this for yourself or for a commission? Josiah asked. This is a commission. This is a it's a commission, but it's also to use up some of my old material. So I can clear up some more space to buy more stuff. Yeah, and it also has its. Charles said Oscar the Grouch would love this idea. Yeah, a part of the influence also came from this book called Big Bird's Busy Book, and in there's a whole thing about Oscar saying that the types of trash you should save for art projects, and it reminded me of this project a little bit too. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am pinning. Hey Tilly, I'm pinning two sides of this, trying to find the pattern I'm going to use for the jersey mesh. And this is not the final neck. This is just the inner structure. It'll probably help me in patterning the actual skin, which I hope to do today as well, because I got to get this off my plate. And I want plenty of slack in it at this point. I don't want to restrict movement, but I do want to find the shape. And then I'm also working on the class that I'm going to be doing for Lisa Land's group, or the Team Land, I guess, next year. So those are the two things I've been working on the last couple of days. And I kind of keep thinking that I might do another puppet patterning prototyping class on Zoom. Because I know that there's a want for it, even though I feel like this is what I do. This is what I'm showing you right now is my prototyping, but it's a lot more in depth when I actually teach a class about it. I know TCU went through it. So I am going to show in Lisa's class. It's tentatively called Build a Dog with Steve or a Cat. And the idea is that we start with a sphere and create the pattern, or create the prototype head, take it apart, true it up, make the actual pattern. Then we each make it's just a simple, it's similar to like the dogs that I usually do, but what I'm going to, let me get up from behind this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically start with no pattern and teach people how to basically prototype it, cut it apart, true it up, make a pattern, cut out the actual pattern, and then make the head, and then we'll basically make the head, and then we'll drape that cover that, or cover the head, make a simple body, simple arms with arm rods, and then basically and a tail, and then basically at the end of it we'll have a dog or a cat depending on what they want to do. But we're all going to do the actual prototyping together, so each pattern will be slightly different. But I'm not just going to give them a pattern. I'm going to teach them the process of additive and subtractive to make, and adding snouts and things like that to make this work. So that's kind of the idea. Hi, Chase. So that's my plan, and we'll probably have to. I mean, I'm not going to do hand armatures, but we will have rods that we make. So they're going to be kind of a cross between the regular dogs I do and those little Tilly puppets that I do. So they'll just have like the little, segmented arms. So anyway, that's the plan for that. Okay. So this is full of pins, so it's not going to be the easiest thing to test out, but let's see how it works. Okay. I'll try and put this. Let me see if I can. Hopefully, I will not stab myself with it. It's like I said, it's full of pins. Ouch. So there is a pin right here, which I just found. But that's so far the only one. So I can tell right now it's a little too tight right here. So Chase asked me a lot of questions about my old comic stuff. And so he's asking, what's your thoughts on the Wizard of Iz? I think it still holds up. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the classic ones. I certainly read a lot of it when I was growing up. I tell you what, if you want to see something that kind of bridges the gap, Henson actually did a Wizard of Id puppet version as a pilot that you can find on YouTube, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's fine. Again, most of my comics were heavily inspired by Watterson and Peanuts, and Calvin and Hobbes, and then Charles Schulz with Peanuts, and Garfield. I think those are probably the big three as far as my influences. Okay, so once I true this up, it'll be fine, I think. It's funny that it's turning to one way. And you guys can't see a darn thing. Okay, so here we are. We're back. This is, again, I'll put this on and risk life and limb with all these pins in here. It is very much looking like Sammy. It'll look even more like it once I put the skin on. Let's see. All right, so I think it needs a little bit more there. I think the whole thing needs to go up. Oh, I didn't realize there was a Chuck Jones Wizard of Id. I guess that makes sense. So I'm learning from my mistakes, and I'm actually putting all these things in an angle, all these pins in at an angle, so I don't stab myself on the way up. Oh, that's totally off center. Okay. Okay, so that's getting closer. So I think it needs a lot of slack in the front and not as much slack in the back. I have so much. Okay, so Chase is asking me about original Melonpool art. I have approximately 4 feet worth of Bristol art, of 4 feet tall of Melonpool artwork, and then 6 books of um, Sunday comics. And originally, I sold them for about $40 a piece. But and I have most of the run. And then I would sell the Sundays, I think, for 150. But yeah, so you probably are not in the game for that much, but yeah, there's still some available. So if you have a comic that you want to have the original of, let me know. And it's probably still available. All right, so we're starting to see it come together. That needs to come back just a little bit, and then I think I can make this piece. And a lot of you who build puppets probably are like, what the heck is he doing? And I'm kind of doing that too. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use a stretch. What do you call it? It's the jersey mesh is very forgiving, so it doesn't have to be exact. And I'll probably basically the only seams I have to worry about are the one here in the front and the one in the back, and then it'll all just be glued at the top, and actually be glued at the top and the bottom. So I have to run these 2 seams. So I think that's basically it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to basically keep this whole thing together. So let me mark it up. I really should rebuild rebuild Sammy and Ralph puppets, because I miss not being able to bring them out and do stuff with. I only say that because this puppet reminds me a lot of the Sammy puppet. Okay, so that's basically this. Put a couple of tick marks in here so I can get it all back together. Same in the back here. If you don't know what I'm doing here, what I'm doing is I'm sticking a pin in on the seam here, and then I can see that it matches up the end of the pin, so I can make my registration marks. All right, and then the way, I don't know exactly where this is going to hit, but I think I'm gonna put a mark here. Oh, that's way off for that, but I'll put one there, and there, and hopefully I can at least figure out how to put this thing back together once I make the real one. So Chase is asking about online courses for puppet beginners. I would suggest going to Puppet Nerd at first and seeing what they do. There's a lot of good information there as far as how to get into it. And then once you get through that, I usually teach more along the lines of I guess moderate to advanced techniques of patterning and design. So that's pretty much what I teach. And I'll be teaching more of those online and in person coming up. So hopefully that answers your question. I probably should do more in the realm of beginner stuff, but for the most part I do focus more on like I don't use I am starting to sell patterns, but I don't really do as much selling of patterns as a lot of other people. Most of what I do is showing how to pattern, because I feel like the most important skill I ever picked up was patterning, and then you don't have to rely on everybody else. Although when you're first starting out, it's really good to understand how a pattern goes together before you start doing it from scratch. Just want to make sure I remember which end's the front. Okay, so those are the two sides. They're actually pretty close, which is great. Yeah, Charles says that Swazzle has some good information and some good videos as well, and that they did a live stream. I watched that whole live stream, and I wish it's actually really good to see how different people build, because honestly, there's a million ways to do everything. We're all using the same materials and a lot of the same techniques, but the way we go about it is so different. I was watching the Swazzle feed and texting a friend of mine and saying, you know, they're doing so much of this 180 degrees from the way that I do it. You know, it's amazing actually that we all work a little bit differently like that. But what ends up happening is when you get stuck on something, like you don't know, like, how do I do that? If you know 2 or 3 different techniques on how to build, you also pick up how to solve different problems, and you can kind of pivot to a new way of, another technique, and you can usually solve your problem, which I think is very good. The way that they did the arms in there, I was like, oh, they brought out the shoelaces. They're doing the exact same. Nope, they're doing it completely different than the way than the way I do it. So it was very interesting for me to watch it. I think the biggest mistake you can make, really with anything, is to get too locked into one way of doing something. I really should, one of these next things I do the clay sculpture pull a pattern way of doing it, because I've never worked that way. I've seen it done. I have some good success with this, doing it the way that I do it. But I'm sure that there's something to be learned by doing it that way. I have pulled a pattern off of a toy, which is basically half the same thing, but I'm not much of a sculptor, although I can do it. But I do tend to think this way, so it's an easier jump for me to do it this way. The rod, and yeah, so that was what I was talking about. Like I usually put the rod in the lower arm, not in the upper, and I usually glue it before I seal it up. And it seemed like, boy, that's a lot of extra work to seal up the whole arm and then shove the arm all the way up in there. But it didn't really seem to change things too much. I also just a second, let me get this lined up. I also found it interesting that the what they were calling the gasket, but I think of a gasket as being like a soft thing. I've heard it used as like a washer or something. I guess it could be considered a gasket. They just put it up at the shoulder and put the shoestring just at the shoulder, whereas I run it all the way down the arm, and I use it as more of a structure to keep the hand together. It's like, you're always tugging on that arm, and there's so much stress with that shoulder. I would just be afraid that it would rip it off. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what it does solve is my strings are always a little too short. So that solves that problem, but I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's really important not to get too set in your ways and try and learn with each one. And when they don't work, they don't work, I mean, one of the things I used to do, and I talk about this all the time, is I used to rebuild all the puppets at the same time. And when I rebuilt those puppets all at the same time, I'd find some new technique that worked on the first puppet. And then by the time I finished the sixth puppet, it'd start breaking. And I knew that it was just a matter of time before all six of them were going to break in a spectacular way at the same. And so I think it's good to learn as much so that you know kind of what to avoid as well. One thing that BJ used to always say was, when you think of a new idea on how to do an arm rod, do the removable arm rod, run it by me first, because it's probably something we've all tried, and we can tell you if it's going to work or not, and you won't waste all your time, which I think is valid. I've tried their I've used those pockets like they used, which is actually something that BJ and them came up with on Crankkickers, as far as I know. And I don't like the pins. I don't like having to deal with the pins. So I've actually been pretty happy with the tube, with the wire that goes inside of it, that's embedded in the palm. And I don't know who came up with that one. I remember reading about it years ago, but I didn't actually try it till Adam put it on his website. And that's what I've been using lately. I'll probably find out in a few months that they all are going to break at the same time. Because I only vetted it on Strange Fork. I didn't really do a whole lot of testing to see how long that was going to last. Have you ever had a puppet that still somewhat holds up to this day? Yeah, of course. I have. I mean, this. Where is it? This Ralph puppet. I mean, while it has its share of problems, doesn't have lining. It doesn't have a real solid. I mean, the hair is pretty wild. It's still a usable. It's still a usable puppet. And I built this in 2001. 2001. So, I mean, what's that? 24 years? Oh, cool. Charles says, I run it all the way down the arm. Also, I use thick string that my dad uses for, is that trot lines? I have some stuff that when I do the Tilly puppets, that's how I do it too, because it's cheaper than a shoelace. I like the shoelace because of, what are those called? The U-slits? I can't remember. There's a name for it. The little hard thing on the end. It's a lot easier to thread it through. So I only use it for that reason, but I bought, I think it was 24 shoelaces for $17, $18. So I used to buy them at the 99-cent store, and that's even a better price than I got them at the 99-cent store. Show you what I'm actually doing. Again, it's not real imperative. This is 100% perfect. It just needs to cover the area I want it to cover. And this is not something I do on most puppets. I really only do it on dogs. Really, I only do it on something that has a single piece body that, doesn't have what do you call it? Doesn't have a neck seam, basically, which this one's not going to have one. So I find that this just, it was actually something I learned, one of the first things that I worked on. So there's one of these that's more stretchy than the other. Which one is that? Yeah, that's pretty stretchy. We'll use that stuff. That's pretty stretchy too. Well, maybe I'll use this. So, yeah, there's a whole mythology. Chase is asking another comic question. So here's what he asked. Ugh. How do the characters interpret Sam's thoughts? Is it like they just understand what he's saying, or do they hear the voice of him? So the way that I always thought of it was that Sam was a very strong sender, but a very weak receiver. So he would talk to them using his thoughts, because he's telepathic. And they would hear the voice, and unless he moved his mouth, they thought they were going crazy and hearing voices. So he got in the habit of moving his mouth in sync with his thoughts so that he could come off as more normal. That was, again, I came up with Sam when I was about 8 years old. So This is 8-year-old logic. But yeah, so that's the way it worked in my head. And when we did the Melonpool movie, we actually talked about whether he should have lip sync or not, and decided very quickly that he needed lip sync because it made no sense if he didn't have it. And again, because I was so young when I started it, I need something bigger than this. Because I was so young when I started this, that a lot of things that make sense or don't make sense didn't bother me. Like the fact that there was a Sam and a Sammy never bothered me until somebody called me out on it. And the fact that there was that I was using thought balloons for the dog never occurred to me that would be a problem. So a lot of it was me kind of retconning stuff to make sure it worked. Okay, so I just need to do one side of this, and then I can fold it because I'm going to sew it on the machine. I'm going to make sure the stretch is. Did I do this right? There's almost no stretch to this, but I want to make sure the stretch is going that way. And I probably should sew this a little bit on the inside of the line because, well, maybe not. I'll just do it the size. We'll see how we do. Okay, what I am going to do, though, I'm going to label this pattern. This is it, 10th or 11th. Oh, today's the 11th. I can't remember if there was or any comics about them going crazy from it. I think the closest was in the Melonpool movie. There was a talking dog, oh my gosh, scene with my friend Jasmine, where where it was kind of addressed, but that might be it. Oh, hey, Charles. Yeah, thank you. I will, I'm going to put this on and then I'll start patterning the body, so you're not going to miss too much. I would love to get this done well, I'd love to get it done today, but I think probably hopefully by tomorrow I'll have it done. And that's a dull diploma. Hey, Kenneth. Yes, my eye is much better. It's basically normal now. I can't even tell. There's a little bit of a floater, but it's basically nothing compared to what it was before. I do get to have one more injection in about a month, but it'll probably have a couple of bad days and then I'll be fine. But then I'll be done with it. So I'm not too worried. I've had all this done before, so I kind of know what to expect now. Yeah, there's a lot of things I need to do with melon pool. Again, there's a lot of gags that I can't remember if I did them anymore, so I may have done that one before, again, or done that at some point. The gag that I always did with Sam was the opposable thumbs gag, and I thought it was funny when I was on that game show that the host actually made an opposable thumbs gag. My friends are always like, ugh, that opposable thumbs gag, because it was one of the first gags that I did in the comic, and the fact that it's the gag that will never die. Low hanging fruit. Let me get rid of this dull one. Oh, Roberta likes Ralphie. That's what Roberta likes. Oh, he asked me, who does Roberta like? Okay. Switch to this camera. The dark camera. Probably wouldn't be as dark if I shut that window. And I should use a zigzag stitch, but I always have problems with zigzag stitches, so I'm not going to bother. This is actually I only use machine sewing, for the most part, I only use machine sewing on the lining, these neck tubes. If I do those canvas pockets in the Hands, I do them there. And clothing. That's basically it. Everything else I do by hand. Unless it's a Tilly puppet or those little practice Tilly puppets, then I do pretty much all of the machine sewing. And in my mind, that's the difference between a practice puppet and a regular and a I guess a professional TV puppet is the hand sewing. Because with the hand sewing, I mean, I know you can pick seams and all that, although I never get the results that everybody claims to get with those. I feel like doing it by hand is really, because you basically put 100 hours into each puppet, and it really does a lot to hide the seams on camera. So if you wonder why puppets are so expensive, that's the main reason. Unless they're machine sewing it, then they have no excuse. Yeah, Sammy the Future. I love Sammy the Future. It's one of my favorites. That doesn't sound good. This is where I cut the feed. No, I was kidding. Not the feed of the thing, but you know, the video to show you that I don't make mistakes. Boy, that's a mess. And of course, it happened with the back stuff, so it's going to be a real mess here. Should probably be using my what do you call it? The walking foot. I don't got time for that. Okay. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, I'm going to give him a little bit smaller jaw than I had anticipated. That's okay. And if it doesn't fit, I just make a new one, or I can alter this one. Again, I try not to get too precious about these things. Okay, question. Was there ever a character in Melonpool that the general audience collectively disliked? Yeah, a lot of people didn't like Jalea. They thought she was a one-trick pony, but I really enjoyed her. I thought she was a fun character. I really like to explore with her the idea that it seems like the only thing that robots can do in science fiction is want to become a human. You have Bicentennial Man, you have Data, you have Johnny Five. I guess you have. I'm trying to think of some of the others, but basically the one story is Pinocchio. They do Pinocchio over and over again, and the whole point of Julia for me was to do the reverse of that, where she actually became human pretty early on, and it was dealing with that. I mean, that was what was interesting to me, writing wise. But I think a lot of people got tired of it. Also, she came along like 5 years into the strip, and aside from Ralphie, was the only character that I hadn't created back when I was a little kid. I mean, Roberta, let's see, it was Mayberry, and then Mayberry was created in 78. And then Sammy and Sam and Ralph were all created in 83. And then Roberta came along probably about 84, 85. So really, most of the characters had been created when I was, preteen. And so I turned this right. I put the cut edge on the wrong side on the inside. I want to make sure I know where the lip is, so I'll put it on backwards. That's the lip. All right, let's see if we can get this thing together. So by the time I did Julia, it was like, oh, this is the first new character I've come up with since I was a little kid. I guess there were other characters, but they didn't stick around. I did a lot with Noda. I think it's funny that since doing Melancholy, the gray side of the Force was never something that was talked about when I was younger. Something that I kind of thought of, and now there's so many characters like that. Balin character that's in Ahsoka is considered to be on the gray side of the. Oh, I just put this on upside down. Considered to be on the gray side of the Force, and I like, oh my god, I came up with that. I should have done something with it more. Okay, so this goes on like so. There we go. So I want to pin on the seam to the seam to try and in an attempt to keep it straight. I kind of know how high it's going to be based on those marks I made. Although they're not going to be right in the right place, but they'll at least give me a hint. And the front doesn't have a seam, but I'm going to pretend like it does. So that's that. Now I'm going to do it on the back here. I want to make sure I don't have this completely turned, which I did. Okay. All right, so that's the front. Again, this is something a lot of people don't do, and that's not a bad thing. It may actually be that I shouldn't do it either, but I'm a creature of habit, and I think it gives it a better finished look, and it also structurally gives it a little bit more strength. Oh, goodbye, Chase. Yeah, I'm about ready to get off too because I have to. I'm gonna go outside and glue this thing, but I'll get it all squared away and then pop off. But as soon as it's glued, I'm gonna come right back on and do the patterning of the skin or the fabric. The skin sounds terrible. Going to cover it with the skin. Like Hannibal Lecter. Tell you what, one thing I do not like about using L200 is it's not nearly as forgiving. But I think it was the right choice. And actually, this is EVA. This isn't even L200. But, okay, there we go. Okay, so why is it binding up? Okay, so you can see how it's way too long now, which is fine. I think I got to split the difference a little bit. So I'm going to pin this lower on this side, I think down to about here, and see if that fixes it. So I had the neck tube pinned in there while I was making this the inside neck tube. I had it pinned inside, and I had it pinned just a little too high. So but that's why I want the stretch to go this way, is so that I can kind of futz with it. I'm just stretching this down as far as I can. I'm pinning it. So this is at the bottom here. I'm going to sew it to the outside liner, so I don't have to really worry about it being long enough. But oh, there we go. So I want my elbow to be right here, just inside, and I want the head to have mobility. And you can start to see the shape. Still pretty flexible. kind of a weird gap here. Oh, it came unpinned right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now that I have this all figured out, I got it all figured out. Now that I have this all figured out, I am going to basically drench this thing in barge around the edges. And because I used this EVA foam and the upholstery foam instead of the dry fast, I'm not going to be able to sew into it, but I've got quite a bit of space in there. Let's see, that's still just a little tight, a little tight. I think I want it to be. You always want to make sure the flexibility is still there. Last thing you want is a statue or stuffed animal. It's better to figure out it's not working at this stage than to hope it, try and make it work and then make sure and then glue it and get it all put together only to find out it doesn't work. So, ouch. All right, there we go. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be working. Which at this point, I think it's working. So. See, this is what I like about prototyping like this is that if this was just a clay sculpture, I couldn't be testing this all the way along. I'd have to be constantly rebuilding. Not that I'm not rebuilding right now, but I'd have to be constantly, I'd be so late in the process that that I, would have to rebuild a bunch of stuff. And right now I'm just making little minor changes and I'm able to test it on the fly, which I really like. Okay, I think this is ready to glue, which is great. I am going to go outside and do that. I will be back on later. Thanks for tuning in and my erratic schedule here. I'll try to be a little bit more consistent, but I am going to go outside and glue, and I'll be back in half an hour or so.